Hi, I'm Stephen Adams, and welcome to another edition of Optimum TV's Dealmakers. Charles Dunn, Principal in the Biotech team at SV Health Investors, joins me today. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Stephen.
And when you take an early bet on a company, what are you looking for? What gets you excited?
So at a very high level, the thing that generally gets me excited is the quality of the science. But sort of to get into that and a bit more granularity, I guess I look for really for three things at the sort of very top of the list. So first of those is generally a company that is developing a therapeutic, a product that we think has the potential to address an area of high unmet medical need. And so really for that, what you need is a defined TPP, which stands for target product profile. So i.e. A defined profile of medicine that we're looking to achieve if it were to be approved. Then the second thing related to that product is that we believe that by addressing that unmet medical need, there will be real commercial value in doing so, and that will ultimately be either attractive to pharma or the public markets, and pharma are the primary buyers of our companies, although they're also acquired by larger biotech companies. So those are the first two things. The third thing is really, as it relates to the investment, is a business plan that is able to significantly de-risk in development the probability that a product is going to be able to achieve that TPP. And so as it relates to the investment, it's really a financing plan that will be able to generate significant value to the investors because it's able to reduce the risk of going forwards in development.
Okay, that sounds very clear. I'm sure there's a lot more to it in practice than those few sentences, but thanks for the brief outline. Turning to the market itself, there does seem to be a more positive biotech market this year, life science market. What are you seeing in terms of M&A, in terms of IPO and other activity?
So I'd say I completely agree that the market is much more positive now, and we've had in the last 6 or 7 years, I would say we've had some quite unusual times in the market. So we went from the 2020-21 highs, which were really spurred through what the sector did for society during the pandemic and the introduction of mRNA vaccines. The following 3 years, the biotech market's performance was much more challenging. So the key index that we really look at is called the XBI. It's a subset of the Nasdaq Biotech Index, and that market was down in the mid 60s in sort of the first quarter last year versus highs in 2021 in the mid 170s. So really, really significant reductions. So there's obviously been sort of challenge since the boom year of COVID, or boom couple of years. I'd say actually looking sort of into this year, things are hugely more positive, as you alluded to. So we've seen a really an unprecedented wave of M&A activity. So there were more deals of $1 billion or greater in value in the first quarter of 2026 than in any other quarter on record. And that's been driven particularly by pharma, who are looking to add mature products to their pipelines as they have key franchises go off patent and lose exclusivity. So there's a $180 billion loss of exclusivity cliff through 2032 for pharma, and that's really what's precipitated the need to go and externally acquire this innovation, which is largely developed in biotech companies. So that's on the M&A side. On the public market side, I'd say that there are also really positive developments. It's probably slightly less mature than on the M&A side, but we had earlier this month the largest biotech IPO in history. It's a company called Parabolis, and they raised $770 million. And if you sort of zoom out, just in terms of the numbers of IPOs, in 2026, there have been 13 so far in the first half of the year versus 9 in the whole of 2025, and there were 20 in 2024. So we're on track to do better than that, and I think that we could be significantly above that.
That all sounds very positive. Thinking a little bit about the geographical availability of capital, you might say, can the UK and Europe, I suppose more widely, catch up with the US and increasingly China in terms of investment and development of biotech, or can we at least not lose any further ground? What are your thoughts on this?
So there's a specific point that you raise in that, which is capital, and I definitely believe that there is a lack of capital at specific stages in development in the UK, which is starting to be addressed, but there's definitely more room to go, and that's specifically at the growth stage, so sort of through the sort of mid and later stages of clinical development. And what that has generally meant is that companies who run their early development in the UK or Europe have to go and seek US investors to fund the later stages of development, and often that means that companies ultimately transition to the US. So that's a specific sort of address of your point on capital. But if I sort of take a step back on your point on sort of not losing pace to the US and now China, I'm not sure catch up is exactly the right way to think about it, because I don't see the UK and the EU as an extension of that as running in an identical race to the US. And similarly, I don't see the US as running in an identical race to China. I think each of those drug development ecosystems has specific advantages and disadvantages. But if I sort of go back related to that point on the UK, I think one of the real advantages that we have in this country is the strength of our scientific research. And so 4 of the top 10 global universities for life sciences research are based in the UK. And on a per capita basis, that means that the UK punches way, way above its weight. And as that relates to drug development, what it really means is the UK is particularly well placed when it comes to the sort of most innovative, breaking science, new medicines coming out of academic research, and turning that research into new drug discovery programs is one of the way, in a more efficient way, is one of the ways I think really that the UK can continue to be globally competitive. If I think about what does that mean, sort of what are the more practical things that the UK could do, because that's a sort of more abstract kind of point. One of the easiest things it could do is the UK could recruit more patients into early and mid-stage clinical studies. So there were something like 19,000 patients recruited into studies last year. That number has been falling for 4 consecutive years and is now at the lowest level since 2017. And that's something that really needs to be addressed. And if it is able to address, then and the UK is able to be a really attractive geography to go and run early and mid-stage clinical studies, which I believe it is, then I think that that's something that will really help continue to enable the UK to be globally competitive.
And just on that particular point of getting more people into UK-based clinical trials and recovering the ground that, as you say, we've lost since 2017, do you think we can do that? And how quickly do you think the UK can do that?
I think we can do that very quickly. I think we can, to answer the question, I think we can definitely do that. And I think we can do that pretty quickly. I think what the MHRA are doing is they're already actually beginning to address some of that. And I think there are some really helpful learnings from some of the other geographies like China and like Australia that we can take best practices from in making the UK sort of similarly attractive to biotech companies to go and run their early and mid-stage clinical studies.
Okay, great. Well, that's an optimistic note. Now, just a little bit of future gazing. When people think about, really big changes which are happening at the moment, everybody mentions China, everybody mentions AI. But if we put those aside, what one thing do you see as having one factor do you see as having the most influence on shaping the industry over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is I think that China and AI are there's a good reason why there's a lot of buzz around each of those 2 factors as it relates to drug development, is because they're going to be really, really transformative, and they're going to bring about unprecedented changes. And so in some ways, I think it's going to be about how does the rest of the world respond to those changes. And something that we talked about a little bit, I'd turn back to the previous question actually, which is how does the regulator adapt to some of those changes? I think there's been some sort of very specific things that the Chinese regulator has done from an ITT perspective, which has made China very attractive to go and run in specific settings, early stage clinical studies, same for Australia. I think that there's also been some opportunity to really embrace what AI can do from a development perspective. And so I think it's really going to be about how the regulators in different geographies choose to adopt and how receptive they are to these different technologies, and ultimately give patients more access to better drugs more quickly.
Super. Well, there's lots of thoughts there and lots of things to think over. Charles Dunn of SV Health Investors, thanks very much indeed.
No, thank you very much, Stephen.
Are you watching Optimum TV? In our bite-sized episodes, we talk to European life science leaders about the hottest trends, innovations and capital market developments in the sector. To subscribe, visit @OptimumComms on YouTube. You can also watch all available episodes on our website, optimumcomms.com.